We are live. Welcome back to the Constantly Consistent podcast with me, Coach Austin Kap, and I'm joined by my very good friend Joe, Joe Jersey JP Pierro. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the sport of CrossFit and what it takes to succeed in CrossFit. And I'll let Joe introduce himself in a second. But first episode, we talked about Heavy Isabel. This episode, I wanted to bring on someone who's currently active in the sport scene and has been active in the sport scene at the elite level for a handful of years now, and pick his brain a little bit and share some of his insight with whoever listens to this. And so just a quick intro to Joe's background in the sport most recently. So congratulations, Joe. Him and his team, they qualified for the CrossFit 2025 CrossFit Games
Thank you.
on his team. Is that?
I said thank you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. And then before that, Joe has been a three-time, even though he didn't go one of the years because he went team, but a three-time qualifier for the semifinals, aka regionals, for all the old school people out there. Super impressive. And then in addition to that, he's come 89th in the Worldwide Open and is a three-time elite Wadapalooza team competitor and two-time individual qualifier for Crash Crucible. So if you know the sport, you know that's extremely impressive. If you don't know the sport and you're just supporting me and you're like, I just want to tune in, or you're a friend of Joe's, that's highly impressive. That means Joe is in like the 0.001% of the CrossFit world. And yeah, I'm just pumped to have him on. So Joe, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Let's go. What episode is this? Number 2?
Number 2, you helped me get the ball
Oh, we're
rolling.
doing it. We're doing it. Let's do it, man.
All right, brother. So
Glad to be here, baby. Let's do it.
yeah, I got a couple, could be a couple softball questions and we can get into some more of the deeper ones. But first one, I'm curious myself, how did you get into CrossFit?
I was pretty overweight growing up and not knowing what route to take after high school. I played high school football. The rule is once a lineman, always a lineman. So I was a big kid growing up. Then like later in high school, junior, senior year, I just really crash dieted, stopped eating and lost all the weight, around the people around me. I wanted to just fit in. I was always the fat kid, that tried to make for himself growing up. You then lose the weight and you're like, damn, I'm a deflated balloon now. I was still freaking offensive lineman in high school, a left guard, and then football ends, right? Then it's like, oh, what do we do now? So just experiencing things, just going to the regular Globo Gym, Retro Fitness. And then one day, one of the guys on the football team, Mike Memo, said his father wanted to invite us to this workout class, and it was a CrossFit gym. So showed up. I was 5 of us, or 5 to 6 of us that went. Did an onboarding class at Great White CrossFit, and I got destroyed. Like I'm talking, like I was 5 other buddies there. It was ab mat sit-ups, rowing, and I believe push-ups, and I was like by far the bottom of the barrel. And I was just like, wow, like it really tore me up and like sat with me that I'm out of shape. Like I'm coming right out of football and I'm still like technically not in shape. Like I do one of these workouts and I'm just exhausted, like on the ground, sweat pouring. And I use it as motivation to then keep on going into 10 years later. Now we sit here on episode 2.
Yeah, awesome, dude. Now, I think that resonates with a lot of people, myself included. I was the opposite. I was always really skinny growing up. So CrossFit kind of gave me an avenue into exploring like physical potential and putting on muscle. But just like you said, I had that. My first CrossFit class, same thing, like absolutely destroyed. And I would bet almost everyone listening to this has had that experience. Now, I'm assuming in high school, did you lift weights like before you went to CrossFit? Like, were you doing like bench press? What was your background before
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. So, the high school's heavy on the weight room, especially during off season. I was just pretty little kid, just not the tallest, not the
Yeah.
strongest. And we just stayed consistent though. Like that's the one thing that our coach taught us is just stay consistent. And we just kept showing up to the weight room, showing up to the weight room. Our quality by far was nowhere near what it is today. And I'm very proud of the progress on the snatch and the cleans and stuff. And yeah, it was a lot of Olympic weightlifting, bench, deadlift, squat. You had the old jammer machine where you gotta like push it out. Did some like holds with hangs from ropes, towel hangs, and our coach was just on us 2 days. It was a definitely good introduction to my then next chapter, which was trying to be competitive in CrossFit.
Yeah. Now, were you always, as those of you that know Joe or if you don't, Joe is arguably one of the strongest dudes in the sport. Were you always really strong? Was that something that you had to work at? Yeah. How, like your strength, which I think is your biggest strength, did that come easy to
So
you or? Yeah.
So my strength, I could always lift. I wasn't definitely the smallest on the team, but I definitely like just fit right in. Like I wasn't like no standout
Mm.
or anything. I was just average, average numbers across the board. I had a 405 squat in high school, so
Oh,
I guess
wow.
average. Probably bench was like 225. We were doing dumbbell bench presses. Probably I was like at the 60s, 70s at the time. I'm very like relative to myself, so like I guess I should take a lot more credit for that stuff because, I
Mhm.
guess being, was it 16, 17 and being able to squat 4 or 5 is like strong. Hypothetically, yes, I guess I was pretty strong then.
I still can't squat 405 and I'm training for multiple years and I'm 31. So I think that's pretty impressive. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. So your strength is something you've worked on, but you were and still are really strong. But I think that's interesting for those listening too, is like, just because you're strong, or if you're coming into the sport and you are strong, you can get stronger. But those who are on the opposite side of the coin, like myself, I still think strength is my biggest area of improvement. And yeah, strength is huge in the sport of CrossFit, as you know, and it's something that's tested a lot and not in such direct ways. I mean, I know for you guys, you had just had the front squat for the teams. So that would be like a direct test of strength, but also like episode one talked about heavy Isabel, which is a strength test because you have to be strong enough to do it, but you obviously need other things as well. But strength, I think you might have told me, or our friend Will might have told me, is like strength gets you in the door, right? Like into the to
Yeah.
competing at the
It's
sport.
like a bottom line, right? Like you have to be this strong. And relating back, to your coach Sam, he has a great listen out there where he goes over the foundational numbers on to, in the sport of CrossFit, the different levels on to be a, let's say, semifinals athlete, to be a games athlete, you got to be X strong. And then those are great foundations to have to then set your focus somewhere else
Mm,
or keep putting your time into that. And like it was never given. I mean, coming into the CrossFit, I did class workouts every day for 2 years, and then did a lot of local competitions and was noticing like I was getting beat in certain things, like a lot of cardio machines, a lot of 1 rep maxes. A lot of these local competitions, they like to program a lift because when
mm,
people lift heavy, crowd goes crazy, makes people want to sign up. PR, it's the highlights of a lot of people. It's the highlight of a lot of people's day. And I then got a coach, right, who I got to know very well over the course of probably 6 years. I was with him, Sean Neefsey, out of Fortitude Fitness, and he got me so strong. Like it was 2 years of just
mm.
squat cycle, front squat cycle, after front squat cycle, after front squat cycle. And it was very broken down in the sense of it was a lot of going to the gym, hit your gymnastics, hit your
Mhm.
weightlifting, then a lot of monostructural machine pieces. So yes, we compete in CrossFit, and CrossFit's great. Definitely in the beginning for seeking strength improvement and cardio improvement, I broke all those things down though, right? Attacked the gymnastics,
Yeah,
attacked that weightlifting, and attacked that cardio in a
gotcha.
monostructure way, in a single modality way. Not so many metcons.
Yeah, yeah, I just follow. So, that's a good lesson for all of us is like, even if you are really strong, you need to continue to get strong and work on, like, what I think you just said was you worked on things individually and then kind of blended them together as you went, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah. So, I like to take it as like a peak, right? Like
Hmm.
CrossFit's the sport we do, but like my mentality is like go really hard, right? Like you gotta win or you gotta get like the
Yeah.
best. So that mentality really takes a big toll on my body at times and might lead to some injury, or I break things down so much that I don't let them recover and I keep almost bashing my head into a wall. So
Hmm.
that's why, my coach in the past, Sean, even now, Tommy Pomatico, um, they they have it all set, right? We have our dates we train for. Right? As the closer we get to competition, the more CrossFit the sport we then do.
So the further out you are, you're not doing like you're doing less CrossFit, right? Is that what you're saying? You're doing more like training. You're not always competing.
Yeah, definitely not. You can't always competing. Having a competition mindset on the daily, I think, is like you're gonna keep bending until you break,
Hmm.
right? Like there's also a way of doing CrossFit for general health, which is phenomenal,
Hmm.
right? Like we could go in, move smooth, right? Almost not go to full exhaustion every day and come out getting better and better every day. But once you do something to the extreme, like a sport, and you do want to put your mindset to be the best in something, there
Hmm.
becomes a time and point where you almost, it becomes risky, right? Like almost you do so much volume, right? You're pushing your limits, you're pushing the volume you're doing, right? Across the whole week, how much you're doing, how much time you spend in the gym. And not trying to ride that line of getting hurt, right? Because you're trying to close the gap, right? Everybody's got a mindset in this sense. We follow the CrossFit game season, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's mindset is I want to win the CrossFit games or get the best version of myself
In that season, yeah, sure.
in that season, right? So your goal, right? You and me have the same goal, right? We're trying to close the gap to the top. How is Austin going to close the gap to the top faster than me on where I'm at right now,
Mm.
right? And it's yeah, it's forever a battle, you know, in all
Yeah,
different aspects of life.
yeah, it's and I think like you said too is it's an individualized approach, right? And like what you're doing is different than what I'm doing. I know that because we talk all the time. We share our training. We have different goals. We have like the overarching similar goal, but we're at different points in our career in the sport, and that's okay, right? And then there's people listening that are a different spot than I am, and I think you have, like you said, you got to start with where you're at and really work on all those things, right? The gymnastics component, the strength component, the monostructural or the cardio component, and yeah, close the gap on those ahead of us. But I wanted to go back to what you just said about this training smart. So just to give it a little more color, how long have you been competing at the elite level? And not to discredit the local comps because I think we all start there, but like how long would you say you've been really competing and trying to make a go at like the elite level?
I've been trying to make a go at the elite level for probably 7 years. Thankfully, I was very healthy along the way for the most part. Minimal setbacks, had a lot of quick improvement, and I'm able to like make it to these big competitions as of probably 5 years and just trying to still qualify for them, like Wadapalooza, which is in Miami. The big festival that everybody loved. It's a highlight of a lot of people's year, and very fun. And just essentially being ready at the go at be fuck.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you. Being ready at go to like when the
Yeah.
competition's there. Well, yeah. So what I wanted to ask, or kind of you reiterate, because I need to hear this as well, is so you've been at like the pinnacle of the sport or close to it for 5 to 7 years now. You've competed at these big name competitions with literally the best athletes in the world in our sport. I just wonder if you could share with us again, like how you might have changed your approach from like it's not going hard all the time 24/7 365, right? Because that's a recipe for disaster, that's a recipe for burnout. And I think it's easy for me to say that as a coach, and it's like but it's one thing for me to say and another thing for you as someone who actually trains that way and has lived it and has experienced success of like yeah, like how you manage that longevity. So can you just kind of go into that again of like how, which I think you were getting to, you train differently at different points of the year versus when it's like the day of Wadapalooza or the day of the CrossFit semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, I think quality's first, right? Like quality rules all, right? Quality is longevity.
Mhm.
You take, yeah, the best thing I could say is, just for walking, right? Like if your walk is bad and you take 10,000 steps a day, right? And there's just stuff off, right? You're taking 10,000 steps on a bad foundation,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So how can you then, right, try to make that foundation as stable as possible at the foundation level to
Mhm.
then allow you to chase that peak along the way, which would be the sport, if that's where your mind is at.
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. So yeah, yeah, like so you're laying a foundation, and I know with training, I think myself included, like we see people like you, or we see the games athletes like crushing it at the games, or like lifting like a 315 snatch, and we're like, I want to do that, and we rush to like load up the bar, or we rush to like go really hard too soon. But what you're saying is like it's not that actually. It's right. You're building the foundation over years and years and years, right? And you're making sure that it's quality.
Yeah, I mean, you see, we're so used to being caught up, like when we see these competitions online and stuff, and like we only see the highlight essentially, right? You don't see the days of going into the gym when, you got stuff going on at home and your
Mm,
mind's not in the right place and you just show up, right? Like showing up is huge too. Like building that consistency and just keep on working on the weaknesses, being stubborn and just keep on going to for when the cameras and the lights are on you, you're able to put out.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think most people, myself included, forget that that's part of the process. And I think, I don't know if you remember this quote you had told me. It was like about the Olympics or something. And you're like, and I'm paraphrasing, maybe you can help me. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Can you, yeah, go ahead, tell. I forgot what it was.
Yeah, so in sport, all these people, like all these sports peak so very few times a year, right?
Mhm.
Peak is like their best output. Like they're 100% ready just to give it their all over the course of a weekend and chasing, trying to make that peak as steep as possible so you're able to put out your best output, right? If you keep just bashing your head into a wall, you're never going to fully recover. You're never going to be able to really just give it that 100% top end effort
Mhm.
to get that true test of your performance while you're healthy, recovered, and fueled through training. Because if you keep just bashing your head into a wall daily, your gas tank's never going to fill up for that important time or date that you are training for that's in the calendar.
Mhm. So you're saying it's like it's actually it's smarter to, I don't want to say hold back. I guess hold back, right? Because you can't always smash your head against the wall, right? So you're saying just kind of having a little bit more like restraint in your training, or I think a better way of saying it would be like be smarter, right, around your training.
Yeah, yeah. Be smarter. Like it comes to life. Like there's good and bad days, and there's going to be good and bad days in the gym, right? Some days are going to be better than others. You're going to have more energy than others, right? Like a bad day to somebody could be like, oh, I got 4 hours of sleep, so that day is going to be almost dragged down a little bit, right? So you're going to almost take it easier in life, right? Then maybe you'll get a great night of sleep in life, and then you'll have like a very high performing day.
So if you experience a bad day in the gym, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so bad days, right, over time turn into great progress, right? Because if you just have a bad day in life and you just don't show up,
Hmm.
right, you're letting your family down, you're letting the people down around you, it could be financials that you might get behind on, right? So no matter what happens, like show up, dude, just
Yeah.
show up. And like the same thing goes with training. Like not every day is going to be a good day, and those days that you might not feel 100%, you could take it back a little bit, right?
Hmm.
And other days, you might give it a little more. And right, 33% good days, 33% bad days, and 33% average days, right? And if you just keep showing up, it's just going to keep an onward trajectory.
That's great, man. I think uh, one of my favorite things about sometimes getting able to talk to you like after a session or whatnot is like, yeah, like I experience bad days in the gym. Hopefully not all the time, but like, yeah, I like that 33% or, fairly often. And I think remembering that is really helpful because when you start a new block or a block of training, or you just signed up, right? For example, I just signed up for the qualifiers for Master Fitness Championship, or like for example, put it further out, say like at the end of the season, right? Like the game season has just concluded, it's August, and now you're like, now what? And then you kind of you restart this journey of training for next year's. And like you said, if you're consistent, like you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days where you feel like crap. You're gonna have days where your like 80% feels like 110%. So I love that reminder that, even at the elite level, that happens, and it doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that you're not doing the right training. I love that reminder that like just take it as a day, right? Like keep the consistency, and that's the name of the podcast, constantly consistent. And that's what my mentors have always told me too, is like you got to put it behind you, right? Because you're going to train tomorrow, and then you got to train the next week, and then you got to train the next month, and then you got to train next year. And really like having that zoomed out lens, you realize, my coach Sam would say it's like a bad day or even a bad week of training is like a drop in the bucket at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you show up. Like a big thing that I've learned over the years in CrossFit is I don't like 2 days off back to back. Something about 2 days off just throws me off personally. And I've spoke to quite a few people and they feel the same way. Something about like the 3 day on, 3 days of working out, 1 day of rest, and then 2 days of working out, 1 day of rest is just, I just think it's one of the best training ways you can go about it just so your body can relatively recover. And even if you want to make an additional one of those days an easy cardio day, right? Just so you're still moving, that's fine. Low
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd say yeah, I've seen that in my training too. So would you say that's something you've changed your mind on? Like maybe when you first started training, you would have like the 2 days off, and now you're like, I want like it works for you having 3 on, 1 off, 2 on. Is that did I get that right?
So when I was like working on my foundations, almost more, I mean, always working on foundations, but more so, more focused on gymnastics,
Yep.
strength, cardio. I would work out essentially six, right, 3 days on, one easy cardio day, 2 days on, one day rest. But now, right, I've gotten to the point where I could thankfully say when I see a strength workout, I'm not worried, right? I'm going to place high in it in a
Yeah.
competition or win it depending on where I'm at. And that means I'm in a position and Coach Tommy has me not doing so much strength, right? So I do a lot more cardio stuff, a lot of sports stuff, right? So now like to this day I do kind of do less, but I do more intensity. So throughout my week I do more intensity
Hmm.
and a lot more cycles of progressing through intensity versus like one rep maxes. Like now I'm just touching on my lifts. But that intensity, right, does put a lot of stress on my body. So
Uh-huh.
now I have two full rest days, right? So I'm 3 days on, one day off, 2 days on, one day off. But definitely in the beginning for the aerobic foundation, the volume, I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of value in 3 days on, one day of easy moving, right? That's free cardio,
Yeah.
whether that's working on your VO2 max at a low heart rate, right? Zone two work. It's great for foundations. The 3 day on, one day of cardio, 2 days on, one day of rest.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too to talk about like how that's changed for you. And I think my in my training I'm basically on 6 days. I mean, it's polarized, so right, we don't have to get into details, but like the real I think gem there is that it doesn't it changes, right? And like where you're at, and this is like from a coach's lens, when you work with a client, you work with an athlete, it's not their training is not going to look the same forever. And I know that sounds really overly simplistic, but it's like exactly to your point when you may like when you're newer in the sport, or if I have a client and I'm working with them in over the span of a couple of years, maybe in the beginning their training looks much different, right? Like because you had just got to like they need to bias and focus on certain things, but as they develop and like as you said, as you've developed, now your training has changed, right? So
Yeah, big time.
your training is yeah. So training is like this constant evolving kind of thing, I would say, as you go throughout the years.
And it's gotten to the point where like it was a great peak I had doing team semifinals, and it got to a point where with Tommy he essentially didn't squat me for probably 8 to 12 weeks. I did like zero below parallel. I was lunging, I was doing a
Uh-huh.
lot of bike work, right? I was still getting a lot of blood in the legs, a lot of variations, but never dropping below parallel. And the fact that he had me do that, and I put full trust in him, right? I was
Yeah.
like, dude, I am not squatting at all. Like, are my legs gonna go? Am I
Yeah.
gonna be a disaster? And as soon as I started approaching my next qualifier after 8 weeks of not squatting, he essentially put it for like 2 to 3 weeks of squatting a couple times a week, and then bam, back, right? And I mean, he would hit me with like percentages, a
Uh-huh.
strength percentage, or probably early in the week, and then throw it into Metcon later in the week with wall balls or even like air squats. And it's crazy how fast it came back, and it was so nice to make a progress in a different category, but being able to still retain the strength, even though in the moment it feels like you're losing it, right? But that's where
Yeah.
having full trust in your coach goes.
Dude, I love that. That's like clip that or you're gonna clip that. That's
Yeah,
gonna be great. Right. I
dude,
think that's a
insane.
real golden nugget is like
I
that.
was shocked, dude. Like,
Yeah.
uh, my buddy Nick Bader, he's a very strong dude. CrossFit, started CrossFit, Olympic weightlifting's back to CrossFit, and he did that too, right? He didn't squat for 12 weeks, and he's like, dude, I'm good. I'm good. I still got my strength. I'm building to a heavy clean and jerk here. I'm still hitting 405. I'm snatching here. I'm still like hitting 90, 95%. And hearing it's one thing, right? Doing it's another. Right? Hearing it, you're like, yeah, 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 yeah. But when you're doing it, you're like, oh man, like I'm as vulnerable as it gets right now. Like I feel like I'm gonna lose my legs. I look back at highlights of like CrossFit competitions and just see them squatting. I'm like, oh, I'm never gonna do that again.
Yeah.
But then, when you have someone on your side that's educated, and you put trust in them, it's amazing. You're okay. you're okay and you're almost going to be better off that way.
Yeah, and I think it's a risk, and a good risk, and calculated. And like, yes, you have a coach, I have a coach. Yeah, like so, trusting in your training, trusting in your coach, really, and knowing that it could be a risk to take some of your, like for you, example, you're so strong. Take the resources that you might have been putting in the squat bucket. Right. And you're putting them where you needed it, which was more like the breathing work, endurance work capacity work, like touching that up a little bit more than your absolute strength. And then seeing that that actually works and that it's okay. And then you said, but then you came back to it. So that's something that I want to just reiterate. I do that with clients as well. If they're particularly really strong in an area and we know they're going to crush that, I'll sometimes have them barely do it, if not at all, or maybe touch on it once a week, like just not just to do it, but just to make sure they're touching on it, but to really pool those resources to the areas that need to come up. And that's really important. And I think that's something that we can all take away from this is like to improve in our sport. It's a crazy sport. You have to be good at everything, right? It's not like we just run, we literally do everything.
Yeah. And if you're chasing three modalities, right? Cardio,
Yep.
gymnastics, weightlifting, where's your lowest hanging fruit, right?
Yeah.
What can you put time in to then what's like the easiest thing to put time in to then raise that up? So you just keep raising your foundation and everything, right? Because if you raise your lowest hanging fruit up, you're gonna find spots on the leaderboard.
Yeah, dude, that's great. I want to build off that and kind of ask, which you might have just mentioned it, but maybe you have another answer. And this could be a blanket statement, but if there was one piece of advice for an aspiring CrossFit athlete looking to make it to the elite level, what would you tell them? And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but like, it could even be like what you would tell
I
me
got one.
myself.
When you're listening to strength cycles and you're listening to RPE, maybe strength cycles, right? RPE, rated perceived exertion, how hard you're going. Your scale might be 1 to 10. It might be like 5 to 10, 10 being max effort, one being the easiest. Be conservative on your RPEs, right? Because you were gonna refine your movement patterns at lower percentages. May it be a longer cardio piece with like a lower effort output. But if you keep refining your movement through anything and everything you do, at like lower RPEs, it's gonna make your peak that much higher. A lot of people see 8 RPE and they're like, "Oh, I feel good today. I'm just gonna go for it." And then you see
Yeah.
them lift, and you're like, "Dude, right? 8 RP for me means have at least 2 reps left in the tank, right? Preserve them, right? If I told you you gotta do 8 reps at an 8 RP, you should be able to do 10 reps without blinking, right? Easy.
Mhm.
And it's like not easy, but just relative, relative good form. And I really do think because that's when you're refining your movement patterns happen. That's when you build good habits, you break bad habits. Because whenever your head's down and you're sweating and your heart rate's jacked to the roof, you're gonna go back to what you know.
Mic drop. That was great. Mic drop. I mean, that's awesome, man. I have to remind myself that as well as a coach, even though I love to get after it, I tend to push the envelope too much, and I'm guilty of failing reps when I shouldn't be failing reps. So you heard it from Joe himself, right? Mr. I don't even know his lifts, but super, super strong guy, right? Leave some in the tank.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I was stubborn and didn't do that for a while in the beginning of my training stages, but as you get more experienced and you're trying to find little ways to improve and raise that weight, get more effort, essentially do the same thing while using less energy, right? Put yourself in a better position. If you could refine those movement patterns, you were going to get better. Right? And that happens at the lower RPEs, right? When you're able to think when you're lifting, when you're not just bashing your head into the wall, just trying to get it up.
Yeah.
And I did it, right? I was stubborn for a while. And then I put it to the test. I said, you know what? I'm just going to really like stick to the RPEs. And then I'll never forget, like I did a freaking front squat cycle and it just went through the roof, dude. Like just listening to the RPEs, right? You're very focused on your front rack, getting your elbows up, right? Because I tend to have a roundness in my back because my elbows start to drop. And if you focus on every lift, it just consistency refines that pattern to then have such a big higher ceiling than you previously had throughout that cycle.
That's brilliant, brother. I love that. I'm glad we got it. I was like, I knew to get there. Like that's one of the things that I think just training with you, you've been on my back always, which I'm super appreciative of, like the little things and move better, take some weight off the bar. make him faster, cleaner. And it's easy for me to listen to you because, right, you're someone that I look up to in the sport and is a good friend of mine. But I think sometimes if we don't have that good mentor in our life or a coach or someone in our corner, we're just like, I'm just going to muscle through it. So let that be a good reminder, right? That we want to give ourselves some room to grow in the training. So
Yeah, things will happen overnight, man. You leave RP in the tank in the beginning. Yes, you're like, oh man, you're chomping at the bit. But
mhm.
as time goes on, right, you stay consistent. It's so rewarding. It's so rewarding when it just comes together.
Yeah, man. With that being said, and just to wrap up, before we wrap up, so what do you got this year, competition wise? I know you got the games in August. What else? Where else can we see Joe Pierro on the competition floor this year?
Oh, we're gonna see Joe Pierro on a different competition floor this year that not a lot of people know about, and it's coming. And it might be on a little something something that on the TV, but we might see. And then
Okay.
after that little hoorah, that's gonna be a great experience. Then we will then be going to the CrossFit Games as a team, and that was something I wasn't too pumped on 6 months ago,
Mm.
but definitely looked at the reality of things and where I'm at. And yes, I'm at you say I'm at the 0.000.1%, but I'm really trying to be at like the 0.000, like infinite zeros, 1%. And it feels like such a far gap to close. And team felt like such a great experience this year to be able to qualify for the CrossFit Games. Shout out to Nikki, Josh, and Jordan, my teammates. We're going to be at the CrossFit Games on the first week of August,
That's in Albany, right?
Albany, New York.
Okay. Well, I would imagine most of the people listening to this, hopefully, are outside the tri-state, but I would imagine most are in the tri-state. So I'll definitely be there. We'll come support you. Any other big comps, or I mean, that's kind of you got your eyes set on, which is in August. So you got what, May, June, July. You got about 3 months to prepare. Anything else to end of the year?
Yeah, so after the Team CrossFit Games, we're going to take a little probably deload for a week, off for a week. Then 2 weeks after that, we're going to Colombia.
That's right.
We're we're gonna throw down. We're gonna throw down a different country just because, why not? Good prize money. Hard work pays off programming with it. Hard work pays off is programming it.
Yeah, yeah.
Qualified, and we're gonna go mess around. Me and Willie Carter
Shout out Will Carter.
and Coach Cap. Will Coach
Oh,
Cap be going?
yeah, maybe we'll get a podcast post that and talk about your guys' experience. But that's great. And then for those listening or that don't know Joe, follow him on his Instagram. It's right. It's at Jersey JP. Joe, I just want to thank you, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. Just know that you, like, with all the wisdom that you share with me, I share it with a lot of my friends and clients and colleagues and people in the CrossFit space. So this dude is a great dude. He's very selfless, contributes himself to his friends and to the sport, and just know that I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I would say thank you for the invite. I'm kind of nervous on the camera. I'm always trying to be like, whenever the camera goes on me, I kind of switch personalities. But you're a good host, very calming, cool, calm, collective. I'm very dialed in. I don't think I said one curse word.
That's
You know,
good. It's good. We're trying to
I
keep
was
this
on
G-rated.
I was on the I was on the what is it, the Kill Taylor on Savon. And I feel like every other word was a curse word. Just trying to get a reaction out of them, just so I could almost entertain from them. But this was like nice, organic. This one got information that I never said out there.
Yeah,
To be,
man.
this is
I love
good. This is
that.
a good
Yeah,
gem. Some good
you got
gems
a
in
lot
this
of
one.
information to share, dude, and
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. And yeah, there's a lot that and I know that so it's just kind of getting it out there. And yeah, and this podcast, right? Welcome to the OPEX team, part of the Constant Consistent podcast, right? We're part of the Coach RX network, and we're just pleased to have you, Joe. And we look forward to having you again on future episodes, maybe after the games. We'll see, and maybe talk about your experience there. But until then, man, good luck, crush it, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, brother. Keep crushing it.
All right, brother. Take care.